Almost looks like he didn't do the quiz. Here we go. I got to introduce you to my favorite student, Sanj. Can you read her name to me, please? That's an R. Sorry, who is it? Read me the whole. That's an E and an E on the end there, mister. That's an E and an E. Read it out to me, Sanj, because she gets everything right.
Oh!
Who is it, Sanj? You didn't say a bad word back there or anything. That would be foolish. And hey, who's my favorite student, Sanj? Ann Surkey. She gets everything right. Okay, here we go. Mark your own. All vectors have both magnitude and direction. Okay, 1 mark. If you have a question about how to mark something, at the end, come lawyer with me. So you'll hear me say, if there's anything else you're wondering about, just show it to me. It's easier to work better that way. Number 1, actually that was question 0. All vectors have both magnitude and direction. Number 1, a cannonball is fired horizontally. I would probably underline the word horizontally because that's going to tell me or dictate how I'm going to approach this. You don't have to underline stuff, but I'm telling you, in terms of bang for your buck, that's one of the easiest avoiding making silly mistakes investments of your time that you can possibly make. From a cannon on top of a 25-meter high cliff, you know what? I need to dulp. So here's my picture. And it looks like we're launching horizontally and 80 meters per second. And that's 25. Logan, what are they asking me to find in part A? You know what? How long? Projectile. I would go, oh, I don't need, is there an angle in this question? So no components, but I'm going to still go to my T chart of horizontal and vertical absentatively. So I'm going to go like this. Horizontal, vertical. I know right away my horizontal acceleration, Enzo, is 0. My vertical acceleration, Enzo, is negative 9.8. Don't you dare mix them up, my friend, my friend. Oh, and I know my horizontal velocity is 80. And this is the next one that bugs kids. What's my initial vertical velocity? If I launch horizontally, what else do I know? Yes, it's 0. And this bugs kids because they want to put an 80 there. No, 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 no. The split second you leave the cliff, Sanj, have you started falling yet? No, so what would your velocity be then? 0. Okay. That's not enough. I only have 2 things in each column. Oh, you say that I also have a vertical displacement? I do. I think my vertical displacement is, Duncan, why did I put a negative there? I'm ending up below from where I started from. And now I'm committed. If I want to find time, and Logan, you're right, I am finding time, I have to do this vertically. I'm looking for an equation that has those in it, so not that has horizontal, that has A, VI. You know what? It's this one here. D equals VIT plus a half AT squared. I think I could go like that conveniently. I think I'm going to get T equals the square root of 2D over A. It's going to be 2 times negative 25 divided by negative 9.8. Two times negative 25 divided by negative 9.8, square root. 2.26, is that right? 2.26 seconds. Now, if you got that, 2 out of 2, because I don't care how much of this you show. If you got that wrong, I would give you, I think, a half mark if I saw that equation, 1 whole mark if I saw that equation, and a half mark for the answer. And I hope what you're noticing here, Neve, is I honestly don't care that much about the answer. I care a lot about the method. The answer was only worth a half mark. What that also means, Enzo, is don't you dare ever, ever, ever leave a question blank on a test. I will give you a mark just for identifying the correct equation you're going to use, because I think that's part of a skill that should be rewarded. So there's going to be a couple of nasty questions during the year on your written sections of tests. The only time I'll get grumpy is if you leave it blank, because that means you either didn't try, or maybe you were really, really lost, in which case you should have come in sooner for help. But if you don't know how to get to the very, very end, hey, write down at least how you think you might approach it. Or Doug, if it's a two-parter and you can't get part A and you need part A to do part B, make up a reasonable value for part A. Write a little note, Mr. So for example, part B, you need the time. Yes? What if you couldn't find time, Sanj? In part B, write a little note, Mr. Dueck, I couldn't find T. I'm going to assume that T is 4.2 seconds. And if you crunch it through, even with the wrong time and get the wrong answer, I'll still give you full marks for part B if you do your method right. Because I couldn't care less about the answer. It's the method that I want to get you across. By the way, part B looks like it's asking me to find, right? Which, Enzo, what happened to the plus a half AT squared horizontally? What happened to the plus a half AT squared horizontally? Yeah, I'm picking on you because you botched it yesterday. Not to make fun of you, but by the end of today, you will never make that mistake again if I've done my job right. Right? Say right. Okay. Oh, this is not bad then. It's going to be 80 times 2.26. Except I'm going to go 80 times my answer button. Waha! Do you get 181? Remember, every final answer is to 2 or 3 sig figs. In terms of part marks, this time I would give you 1 whole mark for that, a half mark for sticking in the numbers, and a half mark for the answer. Now, if you got question A wrong, but you took this number and you put it right there and you went 80 times whatever answer you got for part A and you did that correctly, Neve, you get 2 out of 2 on part B. Okay? And I hope what you're hearing, Logan, is, and again, I'm going to say it, don't ever leave something blank. I give out part marks, and that's the other reason with the take-home quizzes that I like to mark them with you. That way you understand what I'm looking for and what I'm not looking for and where you can cut corners and where you better show some stuff. Really, I gave you that much room for part B? Wow. Okay. Number 2, projectile is launched at an angle. Dolp. Draw a little picture. Looks sort of like that. 28 meters per second. Oh, even though I say draw a little picture, if I could give you a little bit of advice, Stephanie, make your triangles fairly big. If you want to make this tougher, draw something like that. You won't be able to fit in the labels. It won't work very well. So I tend to make my triangles especially nice and big. And I've learned, again, that cuts down on dumb mistakes. Don't know why, but it does. I'm going to go, what did we say, 58 degrees. And that's Vx, and that's Vy initial. And for some reason, part of my little I vanished there. Let's try that again. Opposite. Hypotenuse, adjacent. I think Vx is adjacent and hypotenuse. It's going to be cosine. I think you'll have this. Cosine of 58 equals Vx over 28. And this is where the shortcut that I've given you comes from, where I've said Vx equals your velocity cos the angle. 28 cos 58, 14.8 meters per second. By the way, if you forget units, a half mark off. I'm really fussy on units, not because I want to be a jerk, because one of the things I'm trying to teach you is the units, if you memorize what units go with what, actually make your life way easier. So I'll reinforce that by saying, hey, how about when you get something at the very end? In fact, before you hand the test in, you know what you check for? Every answer to 2 or 3 sig figs and units on all your answers. That'd be a good habit to get into. Vy, what trig function would Vy be? I think it's sine. 23.7, is that right? Mm-hmm. How many marks was this worth? How many things did you find? So if you got them right, 2 out of 2 on this question. If you got them wrong, I would give you a half mark for the answer and a half mark if you used cos, a half mark for the answer, and a half mark if you use sine for Vy. Now the odds are if you got them wrong, it's probably because you got sine and cos mixed up, so probably you got 0. But anyways, what I'm trying to teach you, Logan, is method is important to me, far less so than the answer. What's B asking me to find? Did you say maximum height? Vertical. So normally I'd do a T-chart, but I've already identified I'm tackling this vertically, so I'm just going to start listing my vertical stuff. Did I say vertical? I know right away that that's true. I also know that Vy initial is, now for my answer, I went to 3 sig figs, 23.7, but because I'm going to use this for my calculation, and conveniently I have it on my calculator still, I'm going to go 23.745. I'm going to write that down and use that. That's a lie. Jordan, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use my answer button. But just in case I had a different answer stored, I would say I'll carry a few extra sig figs just to be safe, and that way I'll always be accurate to 3 sig figs. Is that all right? Yeah. Hey, what else do I know? Because this is not enough. There has to be something else that I know vertically. Oh, I know Vy final is 0, and they're asking me to find height. That must mean there's an equation that has acceleration, initial velocity, final velocity. There is? Oh, it's the squared 1, right? Vf squared equals Vi squared. Vf squared equals Vi squared plus 2AD. You know what? I think D equals Vf squared minus Vi squared all over 2A. It's going to be 0 minus 23.745 squared all over 2 times negative 9.8. I think the vertical height is going to be 0 minus this answer squared. Oh, it's 0 squared, but what is 0 squared? Just plain old 0, so I got a little bit lazy and I didn't bother putting it in there. Divided by bracket 2 times negative 9.8. Y'all get 28.8? Yes, no? People nodding? 28.8 meters. Again, if you got that, 2 out of 2. Otherwise, I would give you 1 mark if I saw that equation, a half mark for the numbers plugged in, and a half mark for the answer. Yo.
How much marks would we get if we just drew like a picture and try to figure it out what we did?
Show me after. Come lawyer with me after. Okay? So just put a star next to it. Come get me after. C. How long is the projectile in the... Kayvon, what are they asking me to find here? Ah. And I think I'm going to do this vertically. Pretty sure. Because I think if I list my vertical stuff, I know that AY is negative 9.8. I know that VY initial is 23.745. I like. That's not enough. Oh, you told me they want to find time? I need one more thing. What else do I know vertically? What's my vertical distance? No, that's at the top. This is saying how long in the air back down to... By the way, I would say this. Technically, the vertical distance you've traveled is 0. Why? How high were you when you started? How high were you? Sorry, displacement. How high were you? I told you, I get those two mixed up all the time. I'm sloppy. How high were you when you started?
0.
How high are you when you ended?
0.
So your displacement is 0. I wouldn't use that, but that is true. There is one more thing that I know because I'm starting on the ground and ending up on the ground. not a cliff. Huh? Are you saying what goes up must come?
Yeah.
So you're saying that I know Vy final, and that's negative 23.745? Is that what you're saying? You would be correct, sir. So even though I know that, I'm not going to use that, because I think, Enzo, if you're going to stay awake for me, kiddo, I'm going to use V final equals V initial plus AT. I think I'm going to use T equals V final minus V initial all over A. I'm going to use negative 23.745. Take away 23.745. All divided by negative 9.8. I think I'm going to go bracket negative 23. You know what? Oh, no, I can't use my answer button. 745. Take away 23.745. All divided by negative 9.8. You get 4.85? 4.84, depending on what you round it off to. I think 4.85 is accurate, but I'll take 4.84. That's one way to do it. The other way you could have done it, you could have let Doug V final be 0 at the top, find T, and then double it. That'll get you there. You could have let D be that, find T by using D equals VIT plus a half AT squared, I guess. That's a quadratic. I tend to stay away from the quadratic. If something doesn't cancel in the quadratic, I tend to shy away from it. There's about 3 other ways as well. Oh, if you got that, 2 out of 2. Otherwise, I would probably give you 1 mark if I saw that, a half mark for the numbers, and a half mark for the answer, and then I would probably turn the page. I'm seeing vector questions. I'm seeing directions. You know what? I'm putting a compass rose on here. We have force F1. 5 newtons east plus 12 newtons south. How would I add 2 vectors together? I think I would draw them tip to tail. I think by a wonderful fluke, when you do the Pythagoras, this one actually works out evenly, doesn't it? To exactly 13. Newtons at, because this is the 5, 12, 13 triangle. I actually have that one memorized. There's my theta. Opposite, adjacent. Tan theta equals opposite over adjacent. Inverse tan is 12 divided by 5. Is the angle 63.4? 67.4, it's what I said. 67.4 degrees. What of what? North of south, east of west? What of what? South of east. By the way, I would also take 90 minus 67.4, 22.6 degrees east of south. For this one, how many marks is it worth? 1 mark for the magnitude, half mark for the theta, and a half mark for the what of what. Okay. Oh, and if you forgot the newtons, if you forgot the units, a half mark off. Four was the nasty. And the reason is I'm looking at this, I'm seeing angles, not just norths and souths and easts and west. This is going to be a non-right angled triangle. This is going to be cosine law, sine law stuff. I can tell you that right now. So I'm going to be extra special, extra careful. Oh, by the way, this question, number 3, is actually out of 3 marks because you get 1 mark for a correctly labeled diagram. That would get you 1 mark, and then 2 marks for the answer. Right? Make sure you don't miss a mark accidentally. And the same for this one as well. It's going to be worth 3 marks. So I've scrolled down. I'm going to draw compass rose again. And this is not on your formula sheet. This you'll simply have to recognize and realize. You okay there, mister? Not so much kinetic energy. Please keep it in your body. Don't add kinetic energy to your pen. Enzo, what we need to realize when we're talking about an airplane is the plane's engine speed plus the wind. That's what gives you your ground speed. By the way, it's really the plane's engine velocity plus the wind velocity gives you your ground velocity, but they don't call it ground velocity in navigation. They call it ground speed. They use the scalar term even though it's a velocity, and so I'll use the term they use in aviation even though it's a velocity. What are they asking me to find in this question, Jordan?
They're asking me to find the height.
We're at number 4.
The speed.
Which one? Look up, because you clearly zoned out. I got 3 speeds in that equation. What are they asking me to find?
Ground speed.
Is that by itself in my equation already?
Yeah.
Good. Otherwise, I'd have to subtract. That would be vector subtraction. How do I subtract 2 vectors? I don't. I add the opposite. I would have to subtract to get it by itself. Here, though, I have it by itself. I'm going to just add the 2 vectors. Jordan, how would I add 2 vectors together? Why, I think I'd draw them how? So I have 220 meters due east plus 80 meters what of what, Jordan?
30 degrees
North of what? North of what? You draw the east first as a dotted line. You go north of that. How many degrees, Jordan? 30 degrees. And 80, I'll draw it fairly short compared to my original long line, about 1/3 as long-ish. So if I add these 2 together, I'm going to get 220, 80. There is the ground velocity, the ground speed. Got a small problem. Ready? Keep going, Jordan? Jordan, my friend, how big is this angle right here? How big is this angle right here? Yeah? Jordan, ready? How big is this angle right here next to a vector of 80 and next to an east? How big? How big? This one here? How big this one here? How big is the angle next to an 80, right by an east, How big is this angle here, kiddo?
30.
How big is this angle, this little tiny angle right here? Help me out. Yes, what? 30. That's a problem, not on my triangle. How big, Jordan, my friend, is this angle here next to it?
160.
Help me out, Doug. Help me out, Doug. What is it? Really? Oh, okay.
150.
Why? Because what do those 2 angles add together to form?
180.
Okay, got to be able to do this, folks. I know, that's why I was trying to walk you through it. Okay? If you have that, a 220 on the bottom, an 80 going up slanty, and a 150, that gets you 1 mark for the correctly labeled vector diagram. If you got the 220 and you got the 80, but you couldn't get the angle, gets you a half mark on the correct. Yeah?
What if we broke it up?
What if you broke it up?
So what if we like in the first bit there?
Oh, if you went components?
We did components.
Shut up. I'll come back to you. I'll also say learn the cosine law. Because I think now I can go like this. I'll take questions in a second. Let me keep going here. I can go VG squared equals 220 squared plus 80 squared minus 2 times 220 times 80 cos 150. I can go 220 squared plus 80 squared minus 2 times 220 times 80 cos 150. What? Oh, that's V ground squared. Now what? Don't forget the square root. The magnitude of the velocity is 292 meters per second. V ground equals 292 meters per second. Now that's the magnitude. At. Now I need to get an angle. The angle I'm going to get is where my vector is starting from, which is right here. By the way, that angle there, north of south, east of west, what of what? Looking at my picture, what would we call that? Sorry? What do I call that? Not northeast. North of east. By the way, northeast means it's exactly a 45-degree angle. It's not. So north of east. So I'll leave a little space here. It's going to be north of east. But I need to find an angle theta. Can I use SOHCAHTOA? No, unless I went components. I can, however, use the sine law, which I'm going to do right here. I think I can go the sine of 150 divided by what's across from it, which I just found out was 292.03, equals the sine of the mystery angle divided by what's across from it, which is 80. When I cross multiply, I'll get sine theta equals 80 sine 150 divided by 292.03. I'll get 80 sine 150 divided by, bonk, that there. Oh, that's the sine of theta. How can I find what theta, what the angle actually is? Inverse sine of that. And I get an angle of 7.9 degrees. In terms of marks, 1 mark, half mark, half mark.
I thought you liked holding this for degrees.
Normally I do, but that's not, if I'm going to 2 sig figs, 8.0 is not 2 sig figs. 8.0 would be rounded off incorrectly. So I said I want answers to 2 or 3 sig figs. If you did say, did you say 8.0 degrees?
Yeah, I got it.
I'll take it. But on a test, I'd put a little frowny face and think bad thoughts about you. Okay? Now, if you got the right answer using components, 2 out of 2. If you did other things, I heard people asking about other angles, lawyer with me after. It's much easier for me just to look at your paper and then tell you.
So you want us to use the cosine
Okay.
law when we can?
I'm telling you that 2 units from now, you're going to want to use the cosine law 3 lines as opposed to using components 9 lines.
Okay.
Doing you a favor.
For this one? For this
No,
one?
for get comfortable with the cosine law. That's what I'm saying. Okay? You can survive this course perfectly fine doing nothing but components. I don't have an issue with that. It is me saying as a math nerd, hey, there's a shortcut tool. I'm going to use the shortcut tool. Why? Because it's a shortcut tool. So, okay. We'll come back to that. I think I had one more. Oh, yeah. Cliff at an angle. Physics 12. Find the range. Actually, he sits there in my other block, and in fact, I think that might even be the video lesson that I recorded for lesson 6, and you hear me always talk, Cliff, 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 Cliff. Yeah, dumb joke. But, you know, that's how I roll. Neve, do you see an angle? What's the first thing I'm going to do then? Brilliant, Neve. Let's start doing that. That means I'm writing something down. That means that I'm not blanking out. Oh, good, 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 good. So I'm going to say to myself, self, there's going to be a horizontal velocity and an initial vertical velocity. And you know what? I think it's going to be 20, not sine, Mr. Dueck, for x, cos 30, and 20 sine 30. As a matter of fact, this is going to end up being exactly 10. And 20 cos is going to be, well, let's do the math, Mr. Dueck. 17.32. This looks familiar partly because I think the other day we did a velocity that was 20 at an angle of 30. So our initial components were the same. Jordan, is this a projectile? Is this a projectile? Say yes. This is a projectile. Then I'm going to go with my T-chart, horizontal and vertical. Did I give you the whole page? Lots of room. Good. Horizontal, vertical. I'm going to make my list. 0, negative 9.8. Vx was 17.32. Vy, initial. Come on, pen. Vy, initial, 10. That's not enough. I only have 2 things. I need 3 to find the 4. Oh, they told me the height. Dy is, why is that wrong, writing 36? Why? Ending up below? Who used the quadratic formula from here? Who found V final and then found time? So I'm going to do that method. Those who did the quadratic formula, good, but since most of you went with the other one. So I'm going to say to myself, self, I'm going to find Vy final, and then I'll use that to find time. To find Vy final, I think I can go like this. Vy final squared equals Vy initial squared plus 2 Ay dy. I think Vy final is going to be big square root of 10 squared plus 2 negative 9.8 negative 36. It's going to be 10 squared plus 2 times negative 9.8 times negative 36. Square root of that. 28.38. 28.38. Why is that wrong? Because it is. I have to clue in, it's going down. I have to insert the negative there. Okay, now that I have that, I can say T equals V final minus V initial over A. T equals V final negative 28.38 minus V initial all over negative 9.8. Bracket negative answer button, haha, minus 10 divided by negative 9.8. You get a time of flight of 3.92. I'll go 3.9166 seconds. Those who did the quadratic equation should have got the same thing. If you didn't, I'll look at your work later. T equal, what did I say it was, Dueck? 3.9166. 3.9166. And that also means over here 3.9166. Waha! Why is that so nice? Because they want me to find the range. Uh, 17.32. 3.9166. 17.32 times that there thing there. Is the range 67.8? I would also take 67.7, 67.9, anything within 2 sig figs. But I'm pretty sure it's 67.8 meters. Now, if you got that, 4 out of 4. If you did not, I'd probably mark this something as follows. I would probably give you a half mark for finding Vx and a half mark for finding Vy. That's 1 mark out of 4. I would probably give you 1 mark for finding Vy final, 1 mark for finding time, and then 1 mark for the answer. Now, if you did the quadratic formula approach, if you didn't get 4 out of 4 by getting the right answer, bring it up here and lawyer with me, and I'll show you how I would give out part marks. Any questions? Can you give yourself a nice big score at the very, very top of the page out of 21? However, if you need to come lawyer with me, now is the time. Bring